I'm going to get started. I would like to welcome a good friend of mine. I don't have enough words of praise to say for her, so I'm actually going to use other people's words here on my introduction. Ren was interviewed by Lisa McIntosh on her Ash show. I thought that was fantastic. It is a show to celebrate inspirational women, and she was the 90th guest. And it starts out like this. Ren is a fan of cats, tattoos, and craft beer. Resident troublemaker, as if we didn't know that. Giver of epic hugs, and she talks a lot about the ongoing need for diversity in beer, which is what we are going to be discussing tonight. She's also, I found out, the co-founder of the famous Toronto-based Society of Beer Drinking Ladies. And as you saw in mine, she is a member of the Queen of Craft at Wellington Brewery. And just at the beginning of this month, Dominion City Brewing Company, who actually has a bursary for diversity, announced seed funding for and I'm going to read this so I get it exactly right, the Canadian Brewery Inclusion Toolkit, which is put out by Ren's company, Beer Diversity. And it is a resource of licensed material to empower breweries with the tools, the tactics, the resources to institutionalize and cultivate stronger, more diverse, equitable, and inclusive businesses. They are putting words into action. So without any further else, what I'd like to remind you, what my First Nation friend told me the first time I had a conversation, we are here to listen. Ren, one of the best storytellers, talkers I know. Welcome to Conversations with Bill. And if you guys could all mute. If you have a question, tonight we're going to do it a little bit differently. This is Ren's, as long as she wants it. Please put the questions in chat. I may or may not get to it. So by all means, Ren, take it away.
Bill, you're on, honestly, I just feel like, oh, great, now I got to live up to that. So, hi. That's a painting that's way too big that I didn't expect to be that big. So if you know Mr. Toon, Garnet Gary used to be the artist at Great Lakes and used to do their labels. This is the full picture. Usually I move the laptop a bit, so I don't have to explain it. Rob, I'll just show you later. It's it's probably the most awkward painting I own, but I love it. So yeah, I am Ren Navarro. I run a company called Beer Diversity, which has been running for 2 years. This is my 8th year in beer. I started out at Great Lakes in the retail store and then eventually moved on to sales at a bunch of different breweries. So in total, I have worked at 6 Ontario craft breweries. And at every single one, I was the only female sales rep who was Black and identified as queer, which is so strange to say all these years later. And when you think of, we have 400 craft breweries in Ontario, and I'm still like, yeah, I was the only one. And it's just such a strange thing to say. And it's, we think of where we go to drink and where we buy our beer and where we hang out. And it's always like the United Nations of friends. But to hear that the people who are representing your beer don't look like you is still a strange thing all these years later, especially since we talk about craft beer being such a community, except that community is very specific in its look and the way it acts. And it's slowly changing, but it's slowly changing. And some of the stuff that I'm doing with this company came of because of that. There's a lot of empty promises, and I don't realistically think that we can make changes overnight. And those who tell you we can are dirty, dirty liars and don't really want to make any change, because you have to make mistakes and you have to trip through things. Like, think of the first time you learned how to ride your bike. Some of you are probably still sporting scars from it. Like, I got a couple of really good ones on my elbows, but I still ride a bike. And that's how we have to look at this. If we want to do diversity and inclusion and make these changes, it has to be that sometimes you're going to fall off and you're going to hurt yourself and it's going to be really terrible. but you will either get on that bike and continue in that same ride, or you'll take a break and you'll go back to it. And what happens with a lot of industries, not just beer, and I don't want to just pick on beer, but a lot of industries do this thing where they say, well, we want to have more people of color, because they also look at diversity as just skin color. There's no LGBTQ plus unless we're in June. Hey, yay, gays drink beer, woo. Or it's International Women's Day, and it's like, oh yeah, women drink beer, woo, great, you get one day. Don't mess it up. Or it's Black History Month, which is 28 days in February. I hate it, it's stupid. No one ever talks about how Black people drink beer. So, but we can't just do these one thing, like one piece. We can't just push it. We have to stop saying, I want to hire more Black people. I want to hire more people of color. We need to back it out and say, how do I attract people to buy my products, ingest my product, wear my products? Because most people who work in beer have started from, I used to drink in the tap room and they treated me really well. And one day I got to go on a tour and saw how things were and learned a lot and just like, geeked out. And when they were hiring, I applied and here I am. That's how I got my job in beer. That's literally how I got my job in beer, because I would go to the events and I would be welcomed and I would feel really great about it. And when the time to apply came up, I was able to be kind of like creepy stalker woman about all of the Tank 10 offerings and all of the Project X offerings that Great Lakes had. And like, if you're a true geek, you know that Project X was a thing. Like, so it wasn't someone walked up to me and said, you're Black, you kind of drink beer, you should come work here. That doesn't happen. And that is part of the conversation that we really need to start having, because that isn't how you market to white straight guys in beer. It always starts that you're like, hey, you're gonna go canoeing, or you're gonna go do a thing, or whatever these weird commercials are doing. You're either like chopping something down or you're killing something, and they're like, this is the beer for you. Or you're hiking. Whatever you guys do. I'm too lazy for all of that, but it is such a specific marketing ploy, and no one ever says, that's really weird. They just go, oh, okay, cool. It's the same thing with, like, ladies. Remember when we were young, we'd watch when we all had cable, and it would be the Tampax commercial and be that woman on the horse riding across the beach. It's that same kind of thing where it's such specific marketing, and it takes us a really long time to suddenly say, I don't want to ride a horse across the beach while I have my period. I want a tub of Ben & Jerry's ice cream, maybe a good TV show, and a foot rub. I don't know. But it has become part of the vernacular. We can still talk about these commercials years later. I mean, I can still talk about Spuds MacKenzie and the Bud Light girls in their bikinis, and most people go, oh yeah, I still know it. And I mean, even if you were little, you still know that advertising. And to think that advertising in some cases is 30 years old. And when we think of and of course I'm talking about macro, because it was also a period of time where you could show commercials on TV. Obviously things have changed, the government wants us to be healthier, yada 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 yada. But it's, like when I think of people of color or Black people shown in beer commercials, I think of Michelob Ultra, which it's a light beer. I'm never drinking it. But it's like one super jacked Black guy and he's like playing basketball, because of course he is. Or it's the What's Up guys who are just lying around screaming What's Up into a phone for like a minute. And fun fact, they brought that commercial back for COVID. So if you haven't seen it, go and Google it. I didn't see it on TV. Someone sent me the link. And they have dubbed over their WhatsApps parts to literally be about stay home and be safe and drink a Bud Light. So at least Black people are telling you to be safe. You're welcome. But this isn't the norm. And these are things that I really want to address with this company. And when I started the company, I thought I'd be in business for 6 months and it would be a part-time endeavor. And I'm not usually so naive. So I still, when I say it, I'm like, I don't know how I thought I'd be done in 6 months and how the issues of diversity in beer would have been cured. I don't know, maybe I was having a weird day. I hit in the head by something. It was like, yeah, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be great. But in those 6 months, I thought that it would just be an easy peasy, like, here's a thing, here's what we can do, and go off and work on it. What happens though is a lot of breweries say this is too hard and I just want to do it for a short period of time and everyone else can handle it. And I will do this one thing that shows we've made a change, because that's what happens every month with anything that's dedicated. So, you know, like I said at the beginning, Pride is a marketing campaign for a month, and watch to see what happens in terms of breweries that just slap a rainbow flag on their logos versus breweries that say, we're going to give money to this, or we're going to bring in certain people, or the times that they release beer. So bringing it back to craft, look at Muskoka Brewing. So they did Born This Way, which is with the Get Real movement. And that charity's been around for quite some time, doing a lot of work with LGBTQ plus in terms of education and advancement. Muskoka put the beer out in May. And most people are like, yeah, cool, whatever. I did the most awkward happy dance because May is not Pride Month. And that beer, I've been told, will be offered until September. September is not Pride Month. But wait, it is, because gay people drink beer 12 months of the year. So it's such a small thing, but it's such a huge impact. And if you are not part of the community, it doesn't matter to you. The only thing you care about is, does the beer taste good? And is it affordable? Because there is a moment where it doesn't have to be this huge flag that's waved for you to say, hey, this beer is safe for you too. It's just, here it is, but we want to help a group of people who are normally ignored, or they're marginalized, or we just market to them for 30 days or 31, depending on what month we're in. And that's what I'm trying to get people to talk about and take this different look and this different approach, that it shouldn't take a terrible situation in the world, which we're currently in. So pandemic plus Black Lives Matter having to raise up even harder and faster than they ever have before, for suddenly, you know, companies to say, oh yeah, Black people, right, you guys like alcohol of some sort. It pains me to say that this is probably one of the busiest times that I've seen for me. And I was pretty busy before all this happened. And now suddenly places that didn't want to talk to me about diversity are banging at the door saying, how soon can you come and work with me? How soon can we hire you? How soon can you write this policy? How soon can you pose for this photo? And a lot of those guys are being told, I'm booking in August. I'm booking in mid-July. But I'm letting them sweat it out a bit. Because you can't just hire me and say, well, Ren says, now we're okay. Because you can't bring in that person to check your box and say, if we tried it, or if we hired this person, or if we did this, then we're fine. Because pre-pandemic, I did a bunch of talks, and guess what? Mid-pandemic and post George Floyd's terrible murder, there are suddenly breweries that I'm having to message and say, remember that time I came in and talked to you? This is not what I wanted you to do. We need to take a look at it and like figure some stuff and kind of revisit it. And it's interesting to see how quickly people forget. You know, it's one of the breweries I sat down with in February. So it was probably less than a month before all of this happened in terms of the pandemic. And they were great for the first little while. And then suddenly it was nothing. And they did the terrible Blackout Tuesday Instagram box. If you really want to know how I feel about it, I hate it. Really, really hate it. If you just put up the box and you didn't say anything, you need to go away and think about why you just put up a black box and didn't say anything. Because it doesn't mean anything. It didn't do anything, it didn't support anyone, it didn't go any further. But if you put up the black box and you put up some awkward words trying to work through how you felt, I will give you half a biscuit. If you put up something real saying, I don't know what to say, and this freaks us out, and we worry about our friends, I will give you a whole biscuit and maybe a hug when it's safe to do so again. But these are moments where it's like, we'll hopefully never see anything again like this. Because God, I don't know if I can handle anything else. I mean, we still don't have the murder hornets, guys. They're coming. But it's a lot to take in. But people look at breweries and you know, we have to stop saying, well, it's just beer, or it's just spirits, or it's just wine. It's so much more. If your advertising has been solid up until this point, and you drop the ball and you don't say Black Lives Matter, or you say, God forbid, all lives matter, and don't understand why that is a terrible statement, and you have 20,000 followers, even if you say that half of those followers paid attention to what you said, we're kind of rabid squirrels up here. We don't question enough. And we need to question more. And you need to realize that if you are in a position of some kind of authority, whether it be that you do a call, not everyone will question it, but those who get the message will take it away and they'll do something with it. It's a simple thing to do. And if you say, I see you, I hear you, and I don't necessarily understand you, but I'm going to kind of trick through this to like show the rest of the world that I support you. That's such a huge thing. I mean, so what if you lose a bunch of followers? So what if someone says, I'm never buying your beer again? You know what? The people who are most offended by it are racists. Who do you not need sitting with you in a bar or sitting with you on a patio or purchasing your product? People who bring it down. And every time you do a shout out and someone new runs across your stuff and they say, I'm a person of color, I'm a Black woman, or I'm part of the LGBTQ plus community, or, you know, I'm Indigenous, and thank you for validating me in just the smallest of ways, you gain so much more. And it's amazing at how many people, when I say things like that, they say, yeah, but does it really matter? Yeah, it really matters in the end. I mean, if you don't care, you don't care. Just go on with your badass self. But I'd like to see where you end up in a year versus someone who tries to make the effort. You know, it's Indigenous Peoples Day was over the past weekend. And seeing how many people either suddenly kind of tripped over themselves to suddenly be like, Indigenous peoples, we see you. Bar beer's on sale today. It's not how it works, you know? And a couple breweries yesterday were like, hey, we missed it. It's not one day. It's really not one day. Stop saying I missed the day, because it's every day. If you got to post about it, put it in a way that matters, that makes sense. Signal boost those people you can. A really good friend of mine who's is a brother to me is Mark Solomon. And he is a dean at Seneca College. He's such a badass. I love this guy. He is Indigenous and he's a home brewer. And we met because he's a home brewer. And we met because people basically tore him down for publicly saying he was a home brewer because he's Indigenous. I won't repeat the things he told me that people told him. You can imagine it. This guy's a grown-ass man in Canada, which supposedly is the nicest place in the world. I would tell you that we're kind of garbage. And he had to hide that he was a brewer because of the things that people wrote to him. They didn't even say it, they put it in words, so he still has it. And it's amazing at how hard we pat ourselves on the back for being great people. And I mean, I get it. It's not nice to say that Canadians are garbage, but you know what? We're not the nicest of people. The things that we do, we have to stop saying, but we're better than the Americans, but we're better than whatever. Listen, I'm better than Hitler, but that's not a high bar. I'm better than Trump. It's not a high bar. We've got to stop doing that. You're not giving yourself anything when you say that you're better than a really bad human. Just try. Just try and do something better. Learn something. And I did a shout out to Mark on Indigenous Peoples Day. Because of him, I learned so much. And he's been teaching me some phrases, which I will not throw out today because I'm not solid with them yet, and he'll laugh if he knew. But I really am a better person because of him. I'm learning more. I don't speak on behalf of Indigenous peoples, but it changes how I see and how I can talk about things within my company. And being able to take that and spread it to other people, because I've been really lucky to have a massive platform, makes me feel better. I have a long way to go. I get called the diversity expert. I'm no expert. I check off the queer box, the differently abled box, and I'm Black. And somehow that makes me an expert on a lot of things. I barely dressed myself this morning, so I don't know how you guys dress me, but thank you for it. But I think that we need to be really open to things, and I am super #blessed that I can like go around and talk about it. But I take a lot away from them, from all these talks, and I think that when we get together in these moments, we can take a lot away and we can add a lot. If it weren't for Mark, I wouldn't have the knowledge of Indigenous peoples that I have. He's one person, so I can't be like, well, what Mark says like applies to everyone. It doesn't. But because of him, I've also, fostered relationships with other Indigenous peoples in beer. And when we talk about it, I mean, I now know 4 Indigenous people in beer. I know a lot of people in beer. 4. That's crazy. And I mean, even when I think of Black people in beer, it's a small handful of us, and I'm really close to 2 of them, and they are a 35-minute drive from where I sit. Like, that's so bonkers. I'm not even like, oh, I know all these Black people across Canada. They're 2 of my really good friends, and we joke that if we drive around together, if we all died in a car crash with Tui, that'd be it for Black people in Southwest Ontario in beer. Again, I mean, that's so weird. Like, no white guy in beer is like, sure hope that I don't die because I'll never be replaced. So again, like, things we have to think about and really like wonder, why is it happening that way, and how do we change it, and how do we become truly more welcoming? I don't have all the answers, and really, I hope that what I put out there gets people thinking, and that together we can really start to learn a lot more. And I can take what I learned from all of you and add it and keep it going, because that's the whole point. It's not just about, I learned a nugget and I hold on to it and I run away and no one ever sees it, because that's not how you improve a group that we call a community. And can we call a craft beer community right now? Sorta. I don't think we're a tight enough community. I think we're still really fractured in ways, and it's getting better, but we have such a long way to go. I don't know. I mean, I love this community. Don't get me wrong. I'll never leave beer. I tried leaving for 6 months and it was terrible, and I came running back. Also because I'm too feral to work in an office with like adults, but I want to see more, and I want it to be better. I mean, I've had people ask me, do you think that the community will get to the point that you want it to get to? And I said, not within my lifetime. Full disclosure, I'm 45 and most of my family lives to be 100. And I don't think by the time I get 100 that this community will be in the best of places. I think it'll be better, but I think that it's going to be a few generations before we get to a point where it's a little smoother. But that's my thing. Bill, I saw a couple questions pop up.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. I got a couple of my own questions. As a resident troublemaker, which I loved as an apt description, what's your favorite style of beer?
Kat's laughing really hard because she knows I'm not going to say sours. Rob
Absolutely.
makes really great sours from what I've been told. I really love pale ales and IPAs, which is why Shortfinger has made a pale ale so I can drink it. Yeah, those are, I love IPAs.
That would be a great name for a pale ale.
Rob makes great sours from what I've heard.
Pale ale. Either or.
And again, as a resident troublemaker, because I've got 2 light story questions and 2 heavy questions. Post-pandemic, pre-pandemic, what's your favorite hangout?
Post would be kickoff. But
Oh,
it's gone,
I love you so
it'll be
much, Ren.
Pre. I where have I been really excited about? So yeah, so pre-pandemic, it was like kickoff, Arabella, and Ben's Elbow.
Okay.
Post, I don't know. I mean, I'm still spending a lot of time at home, and I feel like once the pandemic's gone, I'm gonna still be spending a lot of time at home. I was at Short Finger on the weekend, which was amazing. So yeah, I'd say
I
yeah.
missed that. I'm heartbroken.
Short Finger.
Yeah.
Before
great.
COVID, or BC,
Yes.
and AC will be after COVID. But I was down at Short Finger. Then we're DC, so it's BC, DC, AC, and then there's a bars concert for SARS. And I think AC/DC will play, and then there's an ADHD stand-up act. I'll be a part of that.
Is this the ADHD stand-up act?
Yeah, it totally is.
Hey, look, squirrel.
And I forgot where I was.
So good.
Now I'm going to give you my hard question.
Uh-oh.
Nah, it's actually not that hard. Canadian Brewers Inclusion Kit.
Yep.
What a wonderful thing, the announcement from Dominion City. My question for you is, that was just a seed fund. Is there an active fundraising enterprise going on right now, or are you still working on that?
I just saw Terry shake his head. Thank you to Terry. Terry has wonderfully donated to help this continue. I am terrible at asking for things like that. So yeah, there probably is. I can already see capping, like, oh God. There is no active like GoFundMe. I think right now I'm sorting things. I'm also going to drop the word Canadian from the brewery inclusion toolkit,
Okay.
because the plan is to hopefully just open it up to whoever wants it. And it's funny enough, I was talking with my mentor this afternoon, and it's going to end up being split into sections. So there'll be a brewery inclusion toolkit, a restaurant and bar, and then a wine one, because pre-COVID I had started working with the wine world, and so I want to have those three pieces out there and active, and at least have it that no one industry is like, well, we didn't know, so why are we going to be inclusive? So that's and also I want to drop Canadian, because there's another group that I am aware of that is slowly working on some kind of diversity thing. They have invited me to be part of it, so I've delayed assisting it because I'm doing my own thing. So we'll see what happens with that, but yeah. So yeah, I guess at the end of the day, yes, there is, I will accept donations because it does help create this. I am also working on a leadership program with Seneca College that it's kind of in the background right now, but they have a very large, diverse group of students, and I've had the honor to work with them earlier this year, and I want to do so much more work with them. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. I was just curious about that. So there'll be more information on your website eventually, I'm assuming.
Eventually, yes.
Yeah, okay. And for me, one last question that I have. As a friend, as an ally, what would be the one thing you would like me to take from this conversation?
Don't be afraid to try, and don't be afraid to fail the first time, the second time, and the third time. Because no one's going to get this perfect. And don't be dejected. It's going to be okay. We're all going to get through it together. And I think that's the most important piece. The second part, I would say, is don't ask your Black friends to do the emotional heavy lifting. So Google's your friend.
Okay, thank you. That's exactly the same thing that one of my Jamaican friends said to me.
Google is always your friend.
Yeah. So we're not done. Other people have questions, but I wish to thank you.
Thank you.
You were Red and I talked back in May before what happened in the US with George Floyd and everything was going on. And I asked her if she'd be willing to come on. I hadn't even done a live cast yet. And she immediately agreed to do that. No strings attached. I'd be honored to do it. And so from the bottom of my heart, I thank you. And as I told you from before, you will be on again. You will. Your story needs to be told over and over. So thank you.
Thank you. It's so great. I love this.
And Remy, do you want to ask a question or do you want me to ask it for you?
Sorry, it's on my unmute. You go ahead and ask it for me, Bill.
So Remy sent me a chat. Has Mark talked about how Indigenous people here in Canada view getting involved in brewing? There's two questions, so I'll let you take that one first.
Well,
Okay.
basically what the general consensus is, about getting involved. What are the feelings within the Indigenous communities due to the sordid history around alcohol and the fact that it's associated with Europe as well, so colonialization?
Mark hasn't really talked a lot about it. He's only talked about it in terms of how people react to him being in beer and basically home brewing. A couple of my friends who actually do work at Dominion City, when they first got the jobs, didn't tell their families because of that stigma and them kind of, colonialism is a great thing, said no one ever. So they weren't happy that, that their sons and their cousins were going into this business of white man's beer. And they have been able to make some changes and impact things at Dominion City. Dominion City, I can't say enough nice things about them. I'm super biased because I do share that scholarship with them, and they have given me some seed money to make some changes. But they have been very open with what they do, and that they're white guys in beer, but they are encouraging all of their staff members to make huge changes. But last year they did several Indigenous beer dinners where they were actually going to different groups and spending weekends with them and learning how to forage and allowing it, taking it away and saying, okay, we're going to put this in our beer. And it made such big differences, and they've been working with different charities. So I think that there were, their coworkers who are of Indigenous backgrounds and have been able to at least show their families what's happening. And it's not just we work here and they treat us nicely. It's we work here, they learn from us. We're able to go to other groups and learn more. Because when they were doing the Indigenous dinners, a lot of people were saying, well, it's just the guys who work for you. And they were like, no, we're not connected to them, and we're learning something, and we're learning foraging that we didn't know. So I think that they're kind of the lucky ones, because normally it isn't addressed in that way, and it's not such a positive story. I think that there are a lot more Indigenous brewers that we just don't know about because they don't feel welcome, they don't feel supported.
Yeah. Thank you. It sounds like there's a lot of potential there, but there's going to be along the way a lot of backlash, a lot of negative backlash, and there's that stigma to fight through, and stereotypes, and coming from all sides, So
yeah, and I mean, think about it. It's hundreds of years of bad press.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a lot to work through. You can't say we have four Indigenous brewers and now everything's hunky dory because they're treated well. There's a lot of education and a lot of slow change to be made.
Yeah, it's going to take a lot of courage for them.
Yeah.
Kat, did you want to ask yours, or would you like me?
Sure, I can ask it. I'm not going to read it because it doesn't really matter. But basically, I'm curious, in your 2 years, and I guess right now too, you could talk about, do you see craft beer in Ontario as being and I know that there's no single generalization, but in general, whatever. Do you see, you know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
Do you see as people as being more at the super problematic all lives matter end? at the like, well, we're not doing anything because we don't know how and we don't want to fuck it up end, or do you see people as just not caring? Like, there's obviously exceptions, right? Like people like Dominion and Merit are working their asses off. But for the breweries that aren't really doing much, like where do you think that's coming from?
I think it's a place of fear. There have been some really great messages put out there where they're just kind of like, we don't know. Some of them do the we don't know, and then some are like, yeah, but we're just going to educate ourselves, but we don't have any money to give to charities, and which is great, but it's such an awkward thing. Like a couple breweries blamed COVID for them not being able to give money, and like that's not what you should do. It's not like, oh, there's a problem, let me throw some money at it. So I've seen a lot of places be like, let me just throw some money at it and not back it up. And then for the ones who have been honest and have said like, we don't have cash, but we're just going to read some books, I've reached out and kind of said like, that's cool, but are you educating yourselves by just reading Google? Are you talking to people? Like what happens when you educate yourself? Like I've learned a ton of stuff and it's just sitting here in my head. It doesn't help anyone. So I'm finding a lot of breweries are getting stuck because they're doing these like deep dive think moments. I've been lucky enough not to see any All Lives Matter, but I've become friends with the Nova Scotia beer memes ladies on Instagram, and they are going through some weird All Lives Matter stuff. So it's happening. I think Ontario is being pretty quiet about it, but quiet doesn't mean good things. As the signs say, silence equals violence. So I think that a lot of Ontario breweries are just stuck in the middle, saying, I want to make a statement, but I'm afraid what it's going to do to my business. And, you know, I think that if you're outspoken and someone says, I don't want to buy your beer, they're probably a racist and you don't want them to buy your beer. But I think that people are still thinking like old school 80s thoughts. Any money is good money.
I'm going to let Dave ask his question. Although really I should just mute him and do it for him, but.
I've stayed muted this whole time, Bill. I've been a very good boy.
Yes, you have.
Yeah. So, Ren, this is obviously a much broader sort of conversation, but I'm going to try to tailor it towards beer. But how does like a brewery or a brewer, like, you know, there's a lot of breweries out there that are all cis white males. And, you know, I guess I'm curious about how they can really promote themselves as like inclusive and, you know, representative of like different cultures while also not kind of falling into like the white savior trap or being disingenuous. Like, and maybe the answer is just hiring you, I would imagine, but like, what's the kind of, how does one toe the line? And maybe this comes back to your falling off the bike multiple times thing, but I'm just curious, like maybe some thoughts around that.
Yeah, for sure. They can always hire me, but realistically, I mean, so pre-COVID, when you look at breweries' Instagram posts and they show photos of groups of people, who's in the group of people? Is there like one or two brown faces in there? Do they bring them to the forefront to be like, see, we have one? I remember having this like weird heated discussion with a brewery owner, and I said, you know, I don't feel welcome when I come here because I showed up with some friends for the first time in like 8 months. And they said, you know, why don't you come here? And I said, because I don't feel welcome. Unless a certain staff member works, I feel like you guys think I'm going to steal something. And I said, all I want is a photo of some brown people or some black people. And I looked around on the patio and I said, take a picture of your patio right now. Because not including me, there are 4 people of color on this patio. And they said, well, isn't that pandering? And I said, well, there's 80 people on the patio right now, and I've noticed 4 black people, so that's not pandering. So I think that's what it needs to be, is that you have to stop being afraid to take photos and to have a diverse group of people in, you know, in whatever capacity of diverse, just do it. It's not like grab your one black staff member and take a photo of them. And if you feel that you have to do that, then highlight your entire staff. Do a week of this is who our staff members are. Because then it doesn't seem weird, because that's literally what you're doing. I mean, I've worked at places where I've been told, go put on your branded shirt, come down and pose for this photo because you're the only one here today that's going to show that we have color here. I mean, I still try that. Like, friends who know me know the photo and know the company, and they think it's hilarious because it's so stupid. And when it happens, people see through it. So it's just, if you want to highlight that you have, you know, the diversity of color, the diversity of differently abled, the diversity of whatever, do it within a group scenario. Show that you're not singling people out and showing that people just show up and sit on your patio. Like, you know, I think of, I was at Shortfinger over the weekend. If we took a picture, there would be, I mean, it's not a huge differentiation, but there would be diversity within that photo. It wouldn't be weird. It wouldn't be like, oh, wait, there's like one black person there. Like, it just would have been a bunch of people having a good time. And I think that's why, you know, we need to take a step back and stop being like, if I see it, it's weird.
Can I ask a question to follow up with that? Because I'm a visual person, so I see those pictures too, and I go, that doesn't look right. It's bad photography. But when I see it in the real world, it doesn't look unnatural. Do you think it's our eyes are trained to look at marketing differently?
It's some of it. I mean, sometimes it's just bad photography. Because that happens a lot, right? Like, someone just runs through and is like, oh, I need to take a picture of the room, click, as they're running through. But it's also when you think of the stickers in brewery windows. Like, I always tell the story of Merritt, where I went on the weekend and someone was like surrounded by a bunch of women with babies. And I was like, oh, there's a lot of babies here today. This is weird. Like, why is this happening? And, you know, and I noticed the breastfeeding picture, like little sticker on the window. And I said to someone, like, is that new? And she said, no, we've had it since we opened. And it was next to the rainbow flag, which is the thing I noticed. So it's almost as like code. Whoever needs to notice the thing notices the thing. And it happens to be that Saturday has become like mommy and me day, which I have cats. I'm not going back on a Saturday, but good for you guys. Like, yay. But that sticker was always there. And it's not like it was my first day at Merritt. But that sticker's not for me, so I don't see it. And that's what you need to do. You need to do these little like safe beacons. And it's simple and it's easy. And whoever needs it gets it. Done. Subtlety sometimes works.
Naomi, you had a question or a couple of questions.
Hi. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the Black is Beautiful beer, like they're doing like the all together. Is that a way that breweries are checking a box, just like the Pride release beer? How can we tell when a brewery is doing more than checking a box? How can we tell when they are trying to actually be good allies and further inclusion?
I think it becomes, yeah.
I just wanted to add, I happen to notice, because I look at brewery websites, there's probably already, before that's come out, twice as many breweries making that as there were altogether, just to put some numbers behind it.
Yeah, it's a large number. I think some of it is guilt, but it's also, as one of my Black friends, who she makes me look very teddy bear like, and I'm not a troublemaker compared to her. She said that it's white guilt and it's an expensive beer to make. And by you setting up to do it and then give 100% of your proceeds, you're just starting to pay us back for how you felt. I don't know if I'm that cynical about it, but yeah, it is a hella expensive beer to make. It is sponsored by a few companies, but the ones I have seen, there are a couple where I'm like, don't make it, but they are doing 100%. And there's a couple breweries I'm like, I'd fight you in the parking lot, but if you're giving 100% of the proceeds to a Black charity, I'll take it. I think it's good. I mean, at the end of the day, it allows people to kind of feel less guilty. And if in 2 months they mess up again, they've given a large amount of money, at least as a start, to a charity to help them do something. But we're all watching, right? So that's the thing. When people sign up and they say that they're doing it, we're like, oh, I didn't expect you to do it. So what's your next move? Like, you can't just throw this out into the ether and be like, see you later, back to my weird white supremacy beers. Like, you won't notice. It's it's now like you've signal boosted yourself, and now you got to follow it up, and now you got to figure out what you're going to do. So, I mean, yeah, there are breweries that I don't think should have done it, but I'm excited to go after them in a couple of months. So.
Anybody have a question?
Yeah, Terry and Emma just popped one up.
Oh, go ahead, Terry.
Oh,
That was her fun.
Emma's going to mute me. She's not going to let me, so you can read it.
You can read faster.
Ren, are there significant differences or similarities in the issues and challenges regarding diversity in wine, which we are completely clueless about, versus what you're seeing in craft beer? Or are they like differences or similar, I guess, in diversity issues?
Yeah, I think that wine definitely has a socioeconomic diversity issue right off the bat.
Okay.
It's I've actually been drinking wine longer than I've been drinking beer, and I am still sticking to kind of the same handful of wineries, and I like move outside of that circle very like every so. I mean, I've literally been drinking wine for like over 25 years, and I'm still. I think I've added like 3 new wineries in the last 10 years. Wine gets away with being really snooty because that's how we think of wine. And there are changes, and they are trying to make changes. But I think of like the photo in October for our favorite beer advocacy group posing with little Sammy Oosterhoff, who, if you don't know who he is, please Google him. He is a trash human. But the wine industry also posed with him in that photo. The craft beer industry caught mad heat. No one said anything about wine. And I talked to some of the breweries that were caught in the photo, and they said, like, how come no one reacted to wine? And I said, oh, because it's easy. We all know that wine's racist. So it's, and I mean, it's not entirely true, but it is, how often are you going to buy a $100 bottle of wine? But the person who buys the $100 bottle of wine can also buy the $3 can of beer. So it's double us in beer than it is in wine. So wine kind of gets this weird pass that I've been really challenging. And if it weren't for COVID, I would have actually done a full talk with them in April. And it was going to be quite a large number of wineries to get together. And the focus was actually going to be LGBTQ+. A good friend of mine in wine he thinks the only out transgendered man in wine, and he's got some stories. And so that was going to be our start, and then we were going to kind of turn it into a series. So yeah, wine has a long way to go. I think that the wineries who are in the know and trying to make changes are starting to align themselves more with craft beer and the way that we're thinking. But as I've said, we still have a long way to go, but wine has double the length to go.
Again, Ren, very important topic to have a conversation around. I do want to thank you for taking your time to enlighten us and educate us. And again, I thank you for being willing to share your story.
Always.
And we will stay in touch, have you back on again.
Yes, please.
And we will keep everybody in the community informed of what is going on. So I'd like to thank all of you for joining in. Remind you that next week, my good friend Dave Soen from Allura Brewing is going to be here. And you can check the website tomorrow morning. It'll give you the specifics of the beers that him and I are going to be tasting. For those of you who are not in the region, 3 of them are at the LCBO, so you'll be able to join in with us. So thank you all for coming by. And I'm going to leave this live for a little bit in case there's a little bit of dialogue. And I have a couple of questions for you afterwards, Ren. I'll probably just pop them online about people that you think I should probably approach to come on and have a conversation with me.
Sweet.
So thanks all of you for joining us. And thank you, Ren. Just absolutely wonderful talk.
Thanks, friends.
Yeah, thank you. That was fantastic. Absolutely dead on.
Thanks, man. This was good.